Okay guys, so just starting off with a recap of the rules of translating the indirect statement. So no matter what order the words are in the Latin sentence, this is the order that you translate an indirect statement. The tricky thing to start off with is obviously noticing that it is an indirect statement, but that's where that list of verbs on page 94 comes in handy. And just consider the fact in English, when you're translating it, could this verb that I've just translated be followed by the word that? And if it can, then check whether there's an accusative and an infinitive in the sentence, and then you've probably stumbled upon an indirect statement. Okay, so the order must always be the main verb, then always insert the word that in English. Sometimes it will make sense without it, but putting it in there means that you're kind of reminding yourself to then translate this whole thing as an indirect statement and to watch out for the weird stuff that follows, because then after the word that, you need to translate the accusative as the subject, as the doer, and then translate your infinitive as if it's a normal verb. And we'll talk about the tenses of that infinitive right now. Okay, so if the main verb, the original verb, is in the present tense, you don't need to worry about the tense of the infinitive too much because nothing changes. So a present tense infinitive, you will translate as a normal present tense verb. A perfect infinitive, you will translate as a perfect tense verb. So there's no issues there. Do not change the tense of that infinitive if the main verb is in the present tense. Okay, where we then hit a challenge is if the main verb is in the past tense, and this can be any form of the past tense. So the perfect, the imperfect, the pluperfect, any of those past tenses make your infinitive go back a tense. What I mean by going back a tense is if your infinitive is in the present tense, it goes back into the imperfect. And if your infinitive is in the perfect tense, it goes back to the pluperfect. So make sure you're following those rules. So present infinitive, when it goes back, it goes to the imperfect. Perfect infinitive, when it goes back, it goes to the pluperfect. But this only happens if the main original verb is in some form of the past tense. Okay, so now we need to talk about the word se. Spelled S-E in Latin. It's little, it's annoying, but the good thing about it is quite often when you find it in a sentence, it's a big hint as to the fact that it will be an indirect statement because it appears most commonly within indirect statements. Se is used when the subject of the main verb is the same as the subject within the reported action. So what I mean by this is if you're saying the general announced that he had won the war, you can see there the subject of the main verb is the general, and also the thing that he's reporting, this winning of the war, has also been done by him. Okay, and in this situation we use se. The reason we use se is because se is a reflexive pronoun. So if anyone does anything to themselves, we use se. In French, like when you say I wash myself, you say je me lave. You use me. It's reflexive. It's when I'm doing something to myself. And se is the same idea, but instead of me, it's the word for he, she, or it. Okay, and because an indirect statement has this subject in the accusative, if someone's reporting something that they themselves have done, they need to use the reflexive pronoun because they're talking about themselves. Let's look at an example. Okay, so quite a straightforward one here. So we have the messenger said. Okay, and then we know, as always, with an indirect statement, we put in the word that. Then we need to find our accusative. Now here, this is the accusative. Se cannot be nominative. I know it really doesn't look accusative, but trust me, it's an accusative word. Just remember that. So the messenger said that. Now se always refers back to whoever is doing that main verb. And who's doing the main verb here? The messenger. We don't need to say the messenger again. So the messenger said that he's referring to himself. Kukurise, perfect infinitive, but this verb was perfect. So said that he had run quam celerime, as quickly as possible. Okay, have a look at this one. So this time we've got the woman believed pop in that. Okay, and then here's our accusative. Always refers back to the doer of the verb. In this case, it's a woman, so it's not going to be he, it's going to be she. Perfect infinitive with a past tense verb. Had worked carefully. Okay. Okay, in this one, we've got a plural subject, so the citizens. Watch out for the tense here. This time it's present tense, so the citizens announce or are announcing would be fine. That. Se is our accusative. It's referring back to that subject. So this time it's that they are defending, because it doesn't need to change tense, the city. So in these three sentences, se has been translated as something differently each time, and that is simply because it must refer back to whoever is doing that verb. The thing to say here is that some of you may notice in that final sentence that we have two accusatives. We have se, but we also have them. Okay, so you might get to that part of the indirect statement, you've put in your that, so the citizens announced that, and then you think, which accusative is my subject here, because there's two different ones. Firstly, it makes sense that it's they are defending the city rather than the city is defending them, although that's not totally bizarre. So the rule will be whichever accusative comes first, like here, that's the one you translate as the subject, and then the second accusative you translate just like a normal accusative object.